You're listening to Permission to Shine, the podcast. Stories of overcoming obstacles and finding self-empowerment with Sherisse Bisram, Inner Power Activation Leader. The Oxford Dictionary describes permission as the action of officially allowing someone to do a particular thing, consent, authorization. What if you were that someone and you gave yourself the permission to be everything you wanted to be and more? No more playing small and accepting less than. You are worthy of the life of your dreams, regardless of what it is that you've been through. And honestly, it's exactly what you've been through that has shaped you into the version of yourself that you are now. Like a diamond, you've endured so much, but instead of breaking, you have become stronger and brighter. And if that's not a reason to shine, then I don't know what is. And if nature can do it, then why the hell can't you? You are brave, you are strong, you are powerful, and you are enough. Hear my call and give yourself the permission to shine, because you don't realise how many people are inspired by your light. Hi everyone, welcome to episode 32, the Stacking Up, and I have the lovely Carolyn here, and I met Carolyn in a group, a mastermind group that we are in, and I was like, I need a guest. And Carolyn was like, I will be your guest. So here we are. Thank you for joining me, Carolyn. Would you like to tell everyone what it is you do, who you are, all the things?
Yeah, so my name's Carolyn, and as Sherisse says, I'm in this brilliant group of, really open sharing women, because I'm a Pinterest manager. So I help people market their business using content they've already got on Pinterest, which I love. But it has taken me quite a few job roles and countries to get here. This is not what I started out doing.
Amazing. Well, this is the thing, right? So my obviously podcast is about the journey, how you got there. So we're all super interested to know your journey and your story. So, I mean, for me, everything kind of stems from childhood experiences, how we were brought up, things like that. So, I mean, whatever you feel is relevant that you want to share about how you kind of got to where you are now, the floor is yours. Please share.
Fab. I think really the theme of what I've done is basically moving about every couple of years and having to adapt to that circumstance. So I grew up in Essex mostly, but my parents are Scottish and from the northeast, and they had moved down looking for work. So we'd moved a couple of times before I went to school. And then I grew up in this lovely little village in Essex, and kind of even from the start of secondary school, I knew that I wanted to do other things, and I wanted to move on, and I wanted to meet new people. And then, so I went off to university to do languages, which I totally loved. But I finished this degree and thought, well, blimey, what do you do with a language degree? I hadn't really gone beyond what you actually do with it. So I did another degree because I thought, I don't really know what to do, so I'll just do a master's. So I did that, and in that time spent a lot of time in South America. So my degree was Spanish, and I managed to spend a lot of time all over South America, but mainly in Colombia, where I did a little bit of research for my studies. I taught at a university, and I was there probably about 18 months, and then bounced back to the UK, and then just was never really focused in what I wanted to do. It's all been kind of opportunity driven. But what's brought me to where I am today is mostly because when I was in my late 20s, I got married, and my husband's in the Royal Navy, which also necessitates a lot of moving about. So every time I had a proper job, I'd do it for a couple of years, and then I'd have to leave because we'd move on, or it wasn't compatible with childcare, or I couldn't do whatever it was. So because during that time I'd retrained as an operating theatre nurse, which again I really, really loved, and then moved into clinical education. So I was the one that all the nurses and doctors had to come to update some training every year. And then I'd been doing this for a year. I'd got promoted, I was really excited. And my husband came back and was like, well, we're going to be moving to Portugal. And I was like, right, okay, Portugal sounds fun. And it did sound fun, but I had to leave another job that I really liked. So when we got to Portugal, we lived just outside Lisbon, and it was an amazing place. We lived in a town called Cascais, loads and loads of expats and brilliant Portuguese people. And we'd been there a few weeks, and I thought, right, I'm going to have to meet some people and get out there and, be sociable. And I joined this fantastic running group. And I am not a runner, really. But somebody had said to me, oh, you've got to join this group because they're really friendly and it'll help you settle in. So I was like, okay, I went. And I was very much attracted, to be honest, more than the running, was the beer at the end of the run. Because it was such a warm climate that we'd run late morning and have a lunchtime beer after the run. So I started off plodding along, and I was really feeling quite lost. I didn't really know what to do. I couldn't work in this job that I'd trained for and that I'd really loved. And I got chatting to quite a few of the women. And then one brilliant woman, I said, so we're saying, so what do you do? And she said, I'm a copywriter. And I was like, oh gosh, that sounds interesting. How did you get into that? And she told me her story. And I was really fascinated because up until then, I'd been massively qualification driven. So I love a certificate. If there's a certificate in it, I'm all over it. There's, it's got to have my name on a bit of paper, that kind of external validation that I can do something. But this conversation with her really made me think. And I was like, well, but I can write. I've done degrees in writing. I've done loads of academic work. I can definitely write. But I was massively stuck on this, oh, but I don't have a certificate. I haven't got a bit of paper that tells somebody that I can write. But I kind of thought, well, what have I got to lose? I haven't got anything else going on. So I started to get in touch with a few people online, with a few job boards, with a few Facebook groups, and offer myself as a content writer, that I would write blogs. And actually, one of the first jobs I did, and one of the clients I still have today, was writing podcast show notes. And I loved doing them. And that was kind of the step into content marketing. But it did take quite a lot for me to get over myself and think that I could actually just bank on a skill that I had already.
Oh, I love that. And I think what's really interesting about your story is that that's a lot of life in a short nutshell there that you've given us. I'm sure that's been a long time, but I think there's a few key points here that I'd love to highlight. So one of which being the fact that you are adapting massively to country shifts, also let alone the fact that your education was really high, you went really all the way in with what you learned. So that's obviously amazing. And I think that there's an element of, maybe moving around so much as well that you, I think you gain a bit more of an inner confidence, don't you? Almost as in, although you may not feel confident externally, it's internally, it's I can cope with this because I've done it so many times, So do you think that probably played a good part in some of the decisions?
Absolutely. And I think that's, if you asked my friends for 3 words about me, probably one of them would be coper. I do feel like I can bank on myself to get stuff done. And actually, and that's a lot to do with my parents and my family of origin. There was, my mother's a teacher and my dad worked in business, but as kind of a psychologist.
Nice.
So there was a lot of conversation and a lot of maybe coaching rather than telling.
That's great.
Which has really stood me in good stead throughout my life.
Yeah, and I think that's so important because this is the thing, right? All of my work comes down to the childhood experience. And I think because, like you said, you were in a space that facilitated these hard conversations in a really growth way, that obviously gave you the tools to be able to navigate through these situations. Whereas, you know, a lot of the time when we shame and blame, that then puts like a chip on your shoulder, you know, to be in like layman terms. And then that way, then you're constantly questioning yourself and like overthinking everything and feeling, are you good enough? And, you know, all of these things, whereas you knew that you could just get through anything. And I think that's such a lovely thing to have, isn't it? That, you know what, no matter what happens, I'm going to do it. And I think even the fact that you did your degree and then went to South America for a bit, like, you know, that is, I always say to everyone, if you want to see the world or really understand life, you have to travel. And I think the fact that obviously you got to do that early on as well, in a completely different environment to your home environment, I think that must have been, you must have had some incredible experiences out there, surely.
It's a massive perspective shift. It really is. You know, if you go from like a comfortable middle class background into such a situation where people are so different and the measure of wealth is so different, it's really interesting, especially as an adolescent, because the first time I went for a year when I was 18, and I volunteered at a Salvation Army orphanage in Paraguay, and then took myself off backpacking around for another 6 months. So to be really plunged into that situation in this orphanage where there were, you know, small children, and then to learn about the background of them, that people these weren't necessarily children without parents. These were children who were in an orphanage because their parents couldn't afford to look after them. And that is massively sobering when you've come from like an affluent country and you've not struggled financially in your life. That really does put a spin on it. And I think it puts a spin on how you manage the rest of your life. I mean, in terms of, I never see all these changes as kind of hurdles. I try and see them as opportunities, because that's what they are. There's something new in everything to do, in everything you do. And so my first son is 18. He's 18 now. And he was born when his dad was away. And because I was quite young, I mean, I think 26 when I had him, his dad was at sea. And I knew that was, happening. That was fine. But we were like, right, the ships going alongside in the Caribbean, and the Navy have these periods where they like have a break, essentially, middle of their deployment, and either families go out to where they are or they can come home. So I had said, right, well, Barbados sounds quite cool. I quite fancy that. So I got on the plane with this 5-week-old baby that I had literally, I'd never had anything to do with babies at all. I had no idea what was going on, and just whipped off to Barbados for 2 weeks with this tiny baby. And looking back, I think, oh my word, how did we manage that?
But what a great way to do it, though, because I think, with that almost that open mind feeling, isn't it, that there's no limitation in your way then, because obviously you're not listening to, oh, don't do that, you're like, I'm just going to take my baby. And actually at 5 weeks, that's probably the best time to go, because they're easy, aren't they? They're just little potatoes that just lie there. That's it. They just poo and cry. That's it.
That was it, yeah. But what was quite interesting, that I didn't realise about myself, and that I've only really realised, I think probably in the last couple of years, was that what was holding me back from doing stuff was this obsession with qualifications and certificates.
But then I think of hearing like where your parents' background was, that they probably drummed into you the importance of it. So then that's probably why it was just deeply ingrained in you, because you knew that in order to maybe be respected in your field, that you felt like that was necessary. But I think to some degree, obviously, you can elaborate on that.
But it's been quite interesting, because although I moved from content marketing, so writing people's blogs and show notes and stuff, into starting my own company when I was abroad, and it was going really well. But it was really interesting when I moved back to the UK, I did then have this but it's not a proper job. Do you know what I mean? Like although I was making a good income from it, when we got back to the UK, I did take a proper job in marketing for a charity, because I still hadn't really got over that feeling of having to hang my identity a bit on a role. And it's taken a while to get out from under that, and to kind of think that actually, although being a Pinterest marketer is not a traditional job, it's not like being a nurse or a teacher or a thing that you would study for. You have to have a skill set to do it.
Absolutely.
And it's as proper as any other thing.
Absolutely. I think it's just that societal kind of boxed up way of looking at things, isn't it? And I think if you've always done it that way, to shift into something. So I would say that a lot of the job roles that you had before, which are incredible, by the way, like all the work you've done is amazing. But I would say they're very, conventional for one, but also very right-hand brain. So it's like very practical, doing jobs, whereas I feel like this is really creative for you. So it's almost like this is stepping into your feminine energy, and that maybe also feel like, wow, I've never thought about business from that perspective of like feminine energy. And I guess the freedom that you get with your creativity within what you're doing now, that might make it feel less job-like, because it's creative and you're using a different part of your brain than you was previously,
Maybe, yeah. And I do, and it's quite interesting. When I'm working on client accounts, everything I do comes from an evidence-based, that kind of scientific bit of like, try something, look at the analytics, does it work? If it doesn't, tweak it. So yeah, to a degree, it's still going back to that kind of data-driven perspective.
I don't think there's anything wrong with that, though. I think that this is the thing in business, especially, we need the mixture of both, don't we? But I think it's nice to have that that freedom within what you're doing, especially with the copyright as well. That's quite nice that you can just be a little bit more creative and free with it, which probably, would you say that you enjoy this now more than what you did your conventional jobs that you've had?
Absolutely. Yeah, I really do. And for several reasons, not only the actual work, the actual physical, scheduling out and creating graphics and writing and stuff, but actually speaking to clients. And I really love digging into that, what are because then my clients are mostly entrepreneurs or small businesses, and digging into that, like, what are your goals for this?
Yeah.
Because you can't, same as social media or Pinterest or YouTube or whatever, it's great to do, but you've got to have a goal for it.
Yeah.
So that you can make your way there. And even if your goal is to have fun and share your message, then that's a perfectly valid goal. But we've still got to know where you're trying to get in order to make the steps to get there.
Yeah, for sure. And I think evidently in who you are is that you are a people person. Everything you've done, learning languages, going to different countries, and then also working in the hospitals, like that's all people led, isn't it, really? So people have always been sort of like a really guiding factor in what you've chosen to do with your life. So I think now the fact that you can put someone's passion into like a visual thing, that's also like an incredible combination of all of your life skills. So although you're saying you didn't have the certificate, you very much have the qualifications in from everything you've done. Everything you are is worthy of this. And I think obviously you've probably come to that understanding now anyway, but I think sometimes it's nice to just hear it again, isn't it, to know that actually, yeah, this is why I'm doing this. It's because I've trained my whole life for it, just without someone to say you're certified.
Yeah, that's it. It's funny, actually, when you talk about it, you often sort of hear yourself say things that you didn't really realize were the case. But yeah, it's a fantastic thing to do. And and actually what I really enjoy is that it does afford me flexibility as an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
That's made a huge difference, is that flexibility to be able to work from anywhere.
And also with your family as well, like the ages of your children obviously are varied now, but I think the fact that you get to choose when you work, that makes probably a massive difference, doesn't it?
It makes a huge difference. And it means that even if we move overseas again, or wherever we move in the UK, it doesn't make any difference to my clients, because some of them are in the US anyway, so they don't mind. But it's, yeah, and it definitely does take away that stress of thinking, I've got to find another job in another couple of years. I've got to find, because there is a bit of a stigma, I think, with, you know, when people say that they're attached to the military in a job market, probably not so much these days with hybrid working, but beforehand there was a bit of a stigma, because people knew that you were gonna leave in a couple of years.
Yeah.
So why invest into you?
No, I think that's I think as well, I mean, I feel like you are someone that, this is probably not the right way to word it, but you make it work. So I feel like just in who you are, it's like in an adverse situation, and I'd love for you to kind of, because obviously I like to talk about the obstacles that we face. So I'll give you a moment to think about that while I just explain. So I feel like, from just what I know of you now, is that I feel like any situation you're put in, you're adaptable. You're just like, right, this will work with this. I'll figure that out. I can make this work. So I feel like you're the problem solver friend. Like, do people call you and say, what do I do? This is happening. What can I sort out? Is that who you are?
Yeah, I think so. But in terms of obstacles, I mean, I'm a massive introvert.
Okay.
Which has probably been the one thing that I've had to try really hard to get over. I mean, I'm probably, like you say, a sociable introvert. Like I really like people, but I do have to then go away and recharge my social battery. And I think a real thing for me is being visible. Like, I'm happy to be the support team. I'm happy to be in the background. I've written a couple of books that I haven't put my real name on, and that I've not talked about, because like I feel, I don't know whether it's that whole thing of like not wanting to show off, or not wanting to, do you know what I mean? That
I know exactly what you mean. That's so interesting as well. Very, very interesting. Well, maybe we'll cross paths again on that conversation, Carolyn, because I feel like that is my work. But yeah, that is so interesting. You know, it's funny, I speak about this with my friends a lot. So I don't think there's one tone of being introverted or extroverted. I think that there's the yin and yang to both. So a lot of my friends we've been speaking about at the moment is being, like, for me, I'm an extroverted introvert. So I feel like I'm outwardly, blah, 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 in everyone's faces. But like you said, I need to be, like, there's certain times where I'm like, no, this is my time. I need to just, you know, quietly just nip off and just be alone. And it's quite funny, because since I've been doing my healing journey and my boundaries have been set, I just have a social battery. So I'll just say to my sister now, like, because she's got a couple of kids, I'm like, I've got to go. She's like, the battery's run out. I'm like, yeah, the battery's run out. And I've just got to like take myself away. But then I've got other friends that are introverted, extrovert. So they're quite quiet, quite reserved, but around the right type of people, then they come out of their shell and they're really comfortable. So I think that there's like a double-edged sword with it now, you know, like now we're understanding it more, but also we're human, aren't we? You know, I don't think there's one way to be. I think that it's what we're comfortable with. And I think yeah, that definitely makes it. What star sign are you?
Capricorn.
Yeah, I was going to say you're an earth sign. So I was thinking either Virgo or Capricorn. That makes so much sense. So you're the Trojan horse. Like, you work, you get it done, you set yourself a goal, you achieve it. That right-hand brain of logic that I was talking about, that's all Capricorn energy for sure. So yeah, I guess probably I would say the only thing that I would say that probably could be hard for you at times is probably how hard you work. Do you find that sometimes you're like working really, really hard to meet a deadline? And
yes, and I do. That is the kind of the downside of flexible work, isn't it? Working from home is that you never leave. Like, if your laptop's there, it's really easy to pick up and keep going.
Yeah, absolutely. And the only reason I know that is because I've got a Capricorn moon. So if you're not aware of the star sign thing, you've got sun, moon and rising. So the sun is like I am, the rising is how you appear to others, and the moon is how you think. So my moon sign is Capricorn. So I have, like, I always know when my invoices are due, just intuitively. I just know. It's just like, and I always tell people it's because I've got a Capricorn moon, but it's obviously so much more than that. And like that's how I structure things. So I've always done multiple jobs. So obviously being a dancer, being a dance teacher, and obviously now adding in my business into the fold as well, just juggling multiple things. I kind of have like a category for everything mentally, where everything sits. And my work now has been, how do I put that into more formulas so I'm not thinking about it more, but actually it's on paper, so then someone can actually help me with that as well. So yeah, that was just a side note, because I think that hardworking thing, and almost like the need to prove yourself through being a hard worker, for me has been like a massive part of my healing journey as well, to let go of that. I don't know if any of that kind of felt.
Yeah, I think so. And it definitely does, in terms of, it's been really important for me to have a job and be involved in, you know, contributing financially to the family. And yeah, and you're right. I think probably when I don't have a job, I feel like I need to apologize for that. You know, because I have to prove I'm doing, you know, that I'm working in other ways.
Yeah.
So when I had little children and I wasn't working, then it was quite difficult, like, to ask for money for stuff, because it just felt like I wasn't contributing.
Yeah, I understand that fully. I'm very much that person too. Like, I like to pay my way, or you know, be of service in some form of a way, to just show that I am a valid member of a team or something like that, you know, in past situations, especially growing up, I think, for me, because well, I say that I think naturally I've always taken the lead in situations. Like, I think or people expect me to take the lead. So, you know, like, if we're in a group environment, you all kind of look for a leader, don't you? And naturally I kind of get pushed into that role, even if I wanted to take a step back. So it's just funny, isn't it, how we look at dynamics of things. But yeah, I guess that feeling of, this makes, if I work hard, then I feel like I've done my bit. I think that was really as well a toxic trait that I had through my prior to my healing journey, was just to feel valid by other people for that.
Yeah, and I think that's quite true of me, actually, is I do need that external validation.
But then I think also you've mentioned that you did the books and you haven't told anyone about them, so there's also a part of you that doesn't need that as well.
Maybe. I mean, it was just like a cozy mystery that I wrote in lockdown, that I did just as an experiment, like just for fun, really. So it's not, that doesn't really have a goal. But also, I think I haven't really told anyone because I feel like it's not, again, proper. It's not a real thing. Like, maybe I'd tell people if I thought it was like some amazing thriller or like really heavy educational tome or something. Maybe I'd be really proud of it then. But then in my mind, I think, oh, it's just a funny little story.
Yeah, but I think that's lovely. I think if more people were just had a creative streak and they just connected to it, I think that there would be like more people just making great art in the world. And I think that's kind of what you've done there, is just, you know, you used the time that you had at home well to create a bit of art that you've put out into the world. You know, I think that's a lovely thing, and more people should do that for sure. And if people bought it, has it been like selling?
It does. It does. It's on Kindle Unlimited, so it does like sell a little bit.
But there you go.
But yeah, and probably if I put any energy into marketing it, then it will probably sell more. But yeah, I think it's that, I don't know, maybe it just doesn't feel like me. You know, maybe because I do serious grown-up things.
But you can do all the things, Carolyn.
And maybe that's what I'm trying to do now. What was it somebody said the other day? I saw online that when you get into your mid-40s, somebody wrote that you're entering your villain era. So like that. Which was like, you know, stopping saying yes to stuff. And
yeah, well, that's sort of my thing there, is like, you know, setting those boundaries and getting clear on what it is you want, you know, and going forward into that and your personal power. But I definitely think there's a streak of you here that has this real creative feminine energy that's like trying to escape in little areas of your life. So I think that might be your villain era, might be the fact that actually you you just express, you just go into this like ethereal energy of just, dancing around in your pants or something,
Yeah, actually, I went to an awards evening the other night, and it was absolutely brilliant to be like, at the end of the night where you're all taking your shoes off and dancing with
Yeah.
bare feet, and it felt so good. I can't remember the
Oh.
last time I did that, and it was so nice to be able to do it.
Oh, good. Well, I'm glad you're having these moments as well, because this is the thing, right? I think with life in general is we create a story for ourselves. So whether it be in childhood or at an early age, we create this narrative of who we are and what it is we do. And we put all of our sort of eggs in that basket. And as we get older or life changes, we realize we don't actually have to have all of our eggs in that basket and or believe this story that we've told ourselves about ourselves. We can change it and adapt at any time. You can add more eggs, you can take more eggs out, you can put eggs in another basket. I think that that's really this journey of life, isn't it? Is that we're always learning and growing. And I mean, for you've moved around place to place, that you understand this so much. But I think yeah, my question for you for now going forward, and I'll check in on you on this, is like, how can you add more of like you into these things, like more of that expression, because I feel like that's what your soul is calling for, and I feel like you're just tethering on the edges a bit, which is really exciting, because I feel like these next few years, especially working in our group with all of these women, is that I feel like that's going to come out more and more, that expression that you have in your soul. And I feel like you definitely have there must be like a moon. Your moon must be something like Pisces or something like that. I'll look it up for you after. We'll find
Yeah,
out.
that would be really interesting.
Yeah, I definitely think that's there for sure. But I think, okay, looking at obviously the business and like your journey, obviously my podcast is called Permission to Shine. So when do you feel like in your life's journey that you feel like you really gave yourself that permission to be like, okay, yeah, this is me, I'm doing it? It might not be like a bold moment, but it might be like a gradual thing. When would you say that was in your journey?
I think it's probably been a gradual thing since I started my own business about 5 years ago, but more recently in the last year or so, when I've decided to go back into my own business full time and realised that to do that successfully and to be able to help more people is that I have to show up more, show up and show off, and
Yeah,
share what I do.
absolutely, that 100%. And I love that for you, because you've got such a lovely character. I think that it was wrong of the world to not know that this of you, so I'm glad I got to have you on here to talk about this for you as well. And then I guess like thinking about this journey and obviously where you're at right now, maybe you could give some like kind of tools on how you, like 3 things that you've kind of done to like get your business up and running, and like how you work with the pins or something like that. Like what do you 3 tips that you'd give to someone listening?
Okay, so 3 tips for in terms of building a business, I would say, is definitely number 1 would be networking. Get to know people, whether it's online or in person. And the other 2 are more specifically towards marketing your business. And the second one would be that even if you're an introvert, even if you don't want to dance on TikTok, even if you don't fancy showing up on Instagram every day, you can use the content that you already have on your website to get visible using Pinterest, because it's a search engine, basically. It's a pretty search engine. And the third thing would be is use the tools available to you. You don't have to hand create and individually post every single day on Pinterest. You can spend an hour a week batching up and scheduling out, and that content will last for years.
Yeah, amazing. No, thank you. That is really helpful. And I didn't realize the power of Pinterest. I think a friend of mine, she's a business owner, she told me about it last year, and I've kind of been inconsistently using it. But I think seeing your journey and like what you've been able to help the other ladies on is inspiring me to get back to it. So I'm definitely I'm like dabbling around with it at the moment, but I'm gonna do what you just said then anyway. That's been in my thought process to just batch content and schedule it out for sure.
Yeah.
So anyone in business listening, it's a good option for sure for more leads, isn't it?
It's definitely a good idea to drive website traffic.
Yeah. Well, how can, if anyone's listening thinking, okay, that sounds really good, how can people work with you? What are your offers and things like that?
Yeah, so I've got a few offers. My business is called Stretch Your Socials, and I'm on Instagram and Pinterest, obviously. And I offer various offers, from just setting up your account and make sure it's all keyworded properly and optimized, and then you take it and run with it, to full management, to courses in managing your own account. And yeah, so you can learn how to do it properly and look after it yourself.
Yeah, nice. And I think that's really helpful for a lot of people, because I feel like in business is that sometimes you don't want to do everything for people, because then that obviously puts you always in, you have to always be available, right? So then when you can give people the tools to do it themselves, that's such a lovely way of doing it. It's like that beautiful synergy of like self-led study, as well as obviously you're guiding, aren't you, rather than doing it all for them, which is amazing. Yeah, amazing stuff. So what we'll do is we'll put your links and stuff in the show notes for anyone that's interested in taking a look at that. So kind of to round off the podcast, I always ask the guests what's a soul message. So I call it soul to soul, and it could be based on like your own experiences, could be a message to younger self, or maybe someone at the moment that you feel like's listening that maybe is a bit lost, or what advice would you give maybe that you're just thinking that would align right now to someone listening?
I think my personal philosophy is that everything will be fine. However it works out, whatever it looks like, it will be fine. You'll get there. And it just might be a bit twistier than you had imagined.
Oh, lovely. No, and that's so true, because that's it, isn't it? When we have a clear intention of where we're heading, we'll always get there for sure. But it's been so lovely to have you, and I'm aware of your time, so that's why I was like, right, let's wrap it up here. But thank you so much for joining me, and yeah, I'll speak to you soon. But yeah, thank you everyone for listening.
Thank you so much for having me, Sherisse. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.